Good morning, podcast family, woman of consciousness, coming at you with another podcast. Again, I know a week seems like a forever time, and then the time frame is a little bit different for individuals. But I do hope that it reaches the ears, that our podcast reach the ears of people who need to hear what needs to be heard, and that it helps you in some way. Like that's what the podcast is about, right? Talk about a bunch of stuff and sometimes we go from one subject to the other, but hopefully you're getting what you need from us in terms of like maybe epiphanies or eye openers so that you can then apply things to your life, or maybe it helps you to get clarity on a concept you've been struggling with or whatnot. And so, excuse me, today we want to kind of talk about the shadow versus the light and kind of what that even means, right? And I don't even know if it's verses. Maybe we shouldn't even put verses because I don't think it's like, I think they're one and the same.
Right.
So
It's not like one against the other.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, but we kind of want to talk about that. And so even in our own logo, we have the yin yang symbol.
Hmm.
And the typical symbols like black and white, although we know it's like a rainbow. We know it can't just be black and white. Not
Right.
everything's just black and white,
Right.
of
Some gray in
course.
there.
Yeah, there's some gray and some other colors all meshed in it. But looking at the two halves of the yin yang and really understanding that both are needed
Mm.
for that full picture to be recognized, the
Mm.
full picture of even kind of how the universe works in some ways, where there's this like, of course, we talk about black holes, right? But which is funny because black holes in my mind lead to like it's like, well, it sucks up all the light, and then I'm like, yeah, but it just comes out at the other end, you know? That's how I see it. It's not like it's sucked up forever and gone, but there's always like this light that's happening as well. But we do know there's a lot of like dark space out there, right? It's there's a lot of darkness, but there's all these
Yeah.
like lights as
Dark
well, right? We have a
matter.
lot of suns. Yeah, dark
Yeah.
matter, whatnot.
Mm.
So, but talking about that light and darkness and even how it exists within our own beingness, and the struggle of that duality between the two that we've kind of just separated as one or the other, right?
Mm.
In our individual self, we're either dark or light, and that's not so true. At least that's not how I see it.
No, definitely not.
Um, yeah, I don't think it's one or the other. Even in watching some of these shows that I've just watched, watching once, and so anyway, I'm hooked on once, right? And I kind of like it. I like it because I like kind of the messages, and it shows you that not all things that are dark, and not all things that are light. That there's
Mm.
this both.
Yeah.
Someone might lean towards more towards the light than the shadow,
Right.
and someone might lean towards the shadow than the light. But that doesn't mean it's completely absent.
Right. Absolutely.
And then it's like that battle between trying to balance or harmonize the both, right? To accept the fact that that shadow does live in some of the lightest people on the planet too,
Yeah.
that they may struggle with how, and I think most people, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, and most people are trying to get rid of it.
Absolutely.
So
Avoid it. Deny it.
especially the shadow, it's the one that gets like the most shit, right?
Yeah. It really does. And it's so misunderstood, I feel.
Mhm,
And even
uh-huh.
shadow work. So many people don't even understand what shadow work is,
Yeah.
for the healing aspect and the integration of it.
Integration of it. Mhm, mhm, mhm. And it gets so much like it's almost, and it's funny because part of like in one, right, they're talking about Hades and the underworld and like, I think you had talked about Hades at one point, you brought him up. But
Oh,
it's kind of like it's shunned to the side as less than, not important, and something that we try to sever.
mhm.
It's like, let me cut off this part of myself completely. Because we want to be enlightened. We want to transcend. We want to, just be. light, and that's
Right.
it. We don't the shadow can just go away, the darkness can go away,
Right.
but
Because it comes
there
down to that
was
good or
Huh? Go ahead.
bad.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Material like form.
Yeah, it's like the good or bad. And in the shadows, it's like the shadow just again gets the shit for everything, right? It's like, well, we're just gonna deny that. We're just gonna get rid of that. You've got to understand that, and this is how I believe, I don't know how you believe, is that once you embrace the shadow, there's an opportunity for healing
Oh, absolutely.
because it's almost like this neglect.
Hmm. Yeah. It's exactly it. It just wants to be acknowledged and seen. Yeah, absolutely. And integrated back. That's yeah. And then there's like the golden shadow part. So for sure, I think there's so much to it that's just not acknowledged. And then sometimes we just blame it. It's the scapegoat.
It is. And there are some really heavy things that do happen within the shadows. I think sometimes it's so heavy we don't know what to do with it. And that totally is
Mm,
real. I don't want to dismiss
no,
it, say
absolutely.
that the pain that can come out of um that place, there are some very heavy, deep wounds
Hmm.
that, that happen within the fear or the shadow side of things, and things
Hmm.
that are hideous but the thing is that we can't just turn our face from it and act like it doesn't exist and say we want to sever it and cut it off because that's not the key to transcendence anyway,
Right.
right? It's like being able to embrace those parts of humanity or those parts of fear or the quote unquote shadow that really being able to be brave enough to face them and forgive them
Hmm. Yeah.
and to move on, and something happens with certain people that are able to forgive um those individuals who have caused harm on others, even, you know what I mean, or have maybe given into that heavier side or the shadow side of things,
Hmm.
or to do these heinous acts that we see happen. But if you
Hmm.
look at the yin yang, right, is a symbol of like it's such a great symbol. And I like it because it's like we know that even in the darkest of places there's light, and
Hmm.
even in the lightest of places there's dark,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right? Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
It's the oneness.
Mhm.
And that's why I love the yin yang too, because it's not about two sections coming together, but it's the wholeness that's holding all of the elemental like parts.
Yeah, together, right? And then
Yeah.
you need both of them to
Yeah.
integrate, right? And to come together. Um, and so I was just telling Pam earlier, like I was having this conversation with somebody about, the light and dark, hell and heaven and all this. And I personally don't ascribe to that
Mm,
idea.
mm,
And I don't believe there's a heaven and a hell. Um, and it's funny because most people say, well, you should, or you did. And I'm like, I don't.
mm,
And I say this because I believe that there is light in everybody and even in the darkest of people, and that they too have an opportunity to find the light within them. And
mhm.
so for me, I like to say that there is reincarnation sounds like a better alternative because
Yeah.
what it does is, I mean, I think we create our own personal hell anyway,
Right.
you know, is that souls have this ability, or not even souls, but individuals have this ability to come back and relive again, to maybe start to break up that heavy, dense darkness that's in them so
Mhm.
that they can let the light shine through a little bit more. And
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I mean, how go ahead.
no, I mean, for me, like the way I see it and feel it, and through my personal experiences, I mean, it's consciousness, right? The universe, it's conscious energy, and so when you're looking at darkness, it's just a lower vibrational. It hasn't, like you said, it hasn't transcended. It hasn't gone through the reincarnation cycles to evolve itself. So it's trapped. It's trapped in this like limitless, like limited kind of like formless like energy, right? So it just manifests as fear and anxiety and all the insecurity. It's like all those really, really heavy energies that we feel on an emotional and mental level that drains our bodies and our minds, causes health issues, and depletes the soul from any type of joyful living, is really what it is. It's just like the soul is buried like the seed at the core center, right? And you got to like dig and dig and dig. But absolutely. So like oh man, the shadow. Yeah, I just like I totally lost my train of thought. I apologize.
That's okay. It happens. It happens to the best of us, I promise.
Oh
But
man.
I know. But and then you'll probably remember as I'm talking, because I'm like, blah, blah, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
But if you look at like too, because I always drew this drawing of like through the chakras through the body. So I
Yes.
always like draw a torso, right? And then
Mhm.
I'll put the navel right at the center, and
Yep.
I'll say that our soul is trying to um move through the body and
Yes.
to connect to
Yes.
these higher fields, and that it's all trying to synergize.
Mhm.
But all of this stuff that's blocking us, it's almost like inflammation in the body. I mean, the body is a representation of everything as well, and even the chakras are in the body, right?
Right.
But it is that energy field that gets
Mm.
trapped
Yes.
and suffocated. And so it's almost like the light in us can barely see through when we're so stuck in the shadow, that
Yeah.
that light can't really penetrate through and
Right.
connect to the higher self, right? And so it's
Right.
like this tiny little beam of light is trying to stream through. It's almost like a poor baby little plant that's trying to
Right.
get through the cracks of the concrete, like,
Yes.
"Oh, I just wanna reach the light." So and then eventually, though, once there's a little crack in there, there's an opportunity to maybe not shatter it completely. Some people could. Some people go through like, when they're going through a huge existential crisis, or if they're going through a spiritual emergency or kundalini awakening or whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
I see it almost like the light was finally not just cracked through, but exploded out. It sort of just shattered all the shadow stuff, and then that shadow stuff's just kind of in chaos, and nobody knows
Yeah.
what to do with it now. They're just like,
Right.
"What do I do now? I'm all over the place." And so those awakenings can be very hard on individuals.
Absolutely.
So
I
so
went through
even
some of that
touching
for
the light.
sure.
So even touching the light, I mean, it's crazy because our body works the same way. When you're doing a detox, to help the body to get all the nutrients it needs, or a cellular repair, or whatever it is for the body, if you go too fast, you can get overly sick.
Yeah.
You have to do it in slow streams. And I think some people, they want to go so fast and don't realize, you know, what can happen even if you had that much maybe light when you're so dense. And so and vice versa, right? It's kind of like people who, let's say for instance, have been they lean towards the light side of things, but all of a sudden have this huge tower event that happens. They don't even know how to handle it because
Mhm.
they have never even experienced what the darkness is like. And
Mhm.
then they have an existential crisis, and that shifts them because it's there to teach us. So they're the same thing. It's like they're both there to teach us something.
Right.
And I think we, for some reason or another, there's this real stigma, or I just feel like the shadow doesn't get the credit it deserves, and I think that's why it's going deeper and deeper into these weird, um, I don't even know what the word would be. Like, I would say people go into psychosis,
Yeah.
but it's like it becomes so dense that it's so twisted that heinous acts will be enacted because of it, because we're not even recognizing it. So I don't know, maybe the ability to even recognize its existence might even alleviate some of that big, heavy burden,
Mm.
right, that the shadow's taking
Mhm.
on. Because it's like maybe starving for attention, and the only way
Mhm.
it knows
That's right.
how is to put people into fear more and more and more and more.
Yep.
It's like, "Look at me, I'm over here." You know? But if you
Yeah.
looked at the yeah, it's right? And so it's like we don't give it any kind of credit. I think we're trying to, right? People talk about shadow work and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it's starting to finally emerge, I think, and understand, because even just the language in the last decade or so, right? Trauma being a word, like nobody ever talked about having trauma when I
Yeah,
was a kid, or even,
yeah,
like social and emotional, kind of intelligence. Those kind of things weren't concepts that I was taught as a kid at all. So
yeah.
now it's like recognizing like these are much more priorities to teach and pass on. And
Mhm,
I think exactly like the shadow, there's so much fear with the shadow. And so like all that heavy density, like you had said, that kind of, you know what I mean? It's like it's self that and it's just mirroring, right? Like mirroring fear, the
yeah.
energy is mirroring into like the physical realities. And so when you're on that vibration of fear, how can you know what I mean? Like it takes a lot of resiliency and strength to overcome that. And when those
Mhm,
energies are that dense, you can really drown in them. You can talk about long phases of getting
mhm,
just swept up into that. And so the darkness just consumes you. And that's the thing, it consumes you and it feeds and in a way off of, your energy. And it's like there has to be strength and resiliency. There has to be that bravery and that courage. So that's where we're looking at like the duality and the polar opposites, and bringing it all into one. Because if you can get on the other side of the fear through courage, you know what I mean? That's the integration and the transcendence.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and it is crazy because, like, so even in the shadows, right, I think it manifests outwardly in heinous acts sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like extremes, like
Yeah.
in total extremes, right? Where, you know, I wouldn't say that like a psychopath or sociopath or narcissist or, all these individuals who may commit some really crazy stuff, right? That they don't fully have the ability to feel something. I think at some level, with the right person, there's still a light, like a spark of light within them.
Yeah.
And maybe it gets touched, right? It gets touched, but maybe it's not enough to fully ignite the flame
Mhm.
so that they can transcend that heavy
Right.
denseness that's living within them. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You
Right.
can see if you sat with those individuals and you had somebody who was skilled and trained enough to talk, eventually they would see that little piece of light in that individual. And
Yeah.
it may be for a microsecond even, but it doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
And that's where I'm at. I'm like, there's no way that someone is all bad, nor is there some way that someone is all good. It's
Exactly.
just a both and, like we have both, and harmonizing, I believe, is the key to transcendence and
Mhm.
enlightenment.
Mhm.
It's to recognize and know that the shadow is there and
Right.
that it is part of us, and
Right.
not that it's not, and that we're trying to get rid of it or sever it. And that's, I hear that misconception with so many people where they're just kind of like, that's why the heaven and hell conversation is like, yeah, no, it's too final, and I don't believe that there's this final thing. You know what I mean? I think it's just always changing. There's like the constant, and then we could see it is that there's this evolution process that happens, not just here on
Mhm.
the planet, but just in the cosmos and everything.
Yes.
It's a change from one to the next. Even if like eventually, say for instance, like I was watching this, it was pretty cool about the cosmos and stuff like that. And they were like, well, how will the universe end? They were trying to say, will it be by explosion, or will it just expand so much that it freezes to death? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but even in that, there is still that spark of light. It's not gonna go anywhere, and who knows what will shift one day or change one day that it gets ignited again and recreates something new, right? Or even a black hole again, that the black hole itself is a rebirth into
Right.
something else, right? It's kinda like,
Absolutely. The womb space would be like a black
exactly.
hole.
That's exactly right, and then boom, it spits out something else, you know what I mean? It's like the cosmic mother.
Exactly.
It's just like so,
Gateway for creation to manifest.
yeah, and in different ways, right? Maybe it's not in, like, a human being form like us, it's like this
No.
whole other morphed.
The planets and the stars. Like,
Yeah,
that's all of the
yeah,
gas and
yeah,
elemental, like
you're right. Um,
consciousness, like
and then
oscillating the
it
form.
yeah, and it's all, like, interconnected, right? And so, for us, I think we just don't give credit to the shadow side, which is
Mm.
interesting. And I also feel like those individuals who are perhaps what we call sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists,
Energy
they're
vampires.
holding in that dense energy.
Mm.
They're not they're not admitting that it's within them, and that's why they end up sort of showing up in the world that way, because they don't want to say I am this.
Right.
They don't want to acknowledge it. And maybe they can't, maybe they don't have the consciousness and awareness to be able to say it. But once they're able to say it, this is who I am, this is what I am, what I think they're allowing themselves to do is begin the healing phase. Now, it may not be in this lifetime, right? They may continue to make those choices of um harming others or hurting others. But they've already come to that next space of transcendence of acknowledging, because if you don't speak it, it resides within you, and then it just builds and 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 builds,
Right.
right? Until you start to become that, because you're so afraid of saying anything, or maybe you're afraid that you're not going to be liked, or you're afraid of um you're like, for instance, you're afraid that you're gonna be poor or whatever it is, right? It's the fear that ends up, like, entrapping you into that
Mhm.
state of being, and
Mhm.
then the light can't get through because you're just holding it internally. It's kinda
Yeah.
like that vessel thing, and I really like that image. I created it quite a long time ago to kind of show how we have it. Like, if you think about, inflammation in the body, again, like, it's really honestly, it works the same way. When we're inflamed, the energy can't get through and it
Right.
becomes sick. We become sick. That's the same thing with the light. So there's this like healthy balance of allowing the light to come through and the shadow not trying to snuff out the light and suffocate it, right?
Mm.
It's being able to like open up that space, and part of it is just being honest about what's happening internally. It
Yeah.
like at least gives a little crack,
Right. And that's the
especially.
thing, because we're like psychologically wired as human beings, and maybe even obviously conditioned and programmed by culture and societies, but it's the roles that we have to play and the mask that we wear. And that's what covers up, our true authentic self. And that's where shadow kind of entwines and gets messy with psyche, because like you said earlier, it's about sometimes people pleasing and wanting to be liked and having issues with boundary setting and all of those things. And yeah, it just it's so it's like so layered and so
Uh-huh.
complex, and yet it's so simple. And it's really about just loving yourself and embracing yourself because like you said, yeah, those chakras are going to get energy blocks. So when you're having like the solar plexus, like you said, looking at that stomach, that core of where your passion, your fire is, right? That is your power center. That's your confidence and your worth. So when you have blocks in your chakra of your stomach, you're going to have lots of like indigestion and anxiety. There's going to be symptoms somatically from each
Mhm.
chakra that's
Mhm.
giving you clues like, hey, you want to close off your heart and not love anybody because you're afraid, then sure, that's fine. But you're also going to end up with like heart disease, heart failure, heart attacks. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So like we have to embrace the fact that there is pain, right? And it's emotions. We're going to go through that spectrum and feel things. And it's the shadow that wants to kind of like push away anything that is like guilty or shameful or where we feel any sense of blame and don't want to look at ourselves, and see any type of imperfection. Um, so that's why it's really important to look at like how are we masking our true identity behind the roles that we play.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then, and speaking our true identity, and sometimes, you know, the true identity of somebody could be more leaning towards shadow, you
Absolutely.
know? That doesn't mean that the light doesn't exist within them.
Yeah.
They're not ready
Mm.
to embrace or harmonize. And I would even say just like embrace, but harmonize. 'Cause I think it's such a huge concept of like harmonizing the both. Like
Mhm.
shadow exists in me. What is the shadow? Like me
Mhm.
having to face my shadow and really, really be like, yeah, it's in me. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean it is me, but it is in me. And how do I work with that? How do I
Yeah,
work with that energy to transcend it, to move it along, to harmonize it with the light,
absolutely.
to find its counter and balance it, right, and
Mhm.
harmonize it.
Right.
Um,
I will say personally for me, I was very dedicated to the shadow work. And so there was times where I kind of like, I sat with the energy, I sat with it. And I don't like horror movies. I don't like blood and like, gore and that kind of like, useless nonsense violence. Like that stuff, like, I get queasy at even seeing blood. I feel like I'm going to pass out, if I cut myself too deep. Um, so I really had to sit with my shadow and look at the type of violence need be like that I as a human being, you know what I mean, could be capable of, like
mm,
um and it was and I think it comes from like when you look at that as part of shadow work, it's like anger, right? There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of anger and stuff there, and usually it's like vengeful, spiteful stuff.
mhm,
Um that I worked with, at least in my experience. And so, but it was acknowledging to the depths of this darkness within me that I felt in that brief moment, like this isn't the core of who I am as a human. Like I'm not trying to go out and hurt people. You know what I
mhm,
mean? But at the
mhm,
end of the day, my darkness is so deep that if I was on like Lord of the Flies or you know what I mean? If I was put in some crazy situation though, like yes, I have what it takes like I
yeah,
like to be killed or to be killed mentality, that
yeah,
dog eat dog world. Like at the end of the day, like my ego has what it takes to persevere. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And that makes you feel really bad about yourself to like,
mhm,
oh, I could
mhm,
hurt people. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to feel bad. We don't want to feel like that. So we move away from that. It doesn't mean I'm going to go out and do it. It was just me in that one moment and feeling my journey, acknowledging the depths of my shadow that yes, I have that ability somewhere that if it ever got triggered, you know what I mean? But again, it's not like because I worked through it and transcended it.
mhm,
And it was just for that moment. And then I even like, as you've been talking about stuff, I keep thinking about when we did last week with Hillman and we were talking about
Mhm,
free will and destiny. And it's
mhm,
this integration, right? Because I feel like the soul is destiny and the human ego is free will. And so they have to be like entwined together. And so I can go through the depths. And I think that's what helps us in our level of practice, right? And in the alchemy and in the levels of mastery. We know we can navigate the darkness. We know we can navigate the light, but you cannot stay in either one. There has to be that neutral. And this is where I see the spectrum on on a pendulum.
mhm, mhm.
And we have to be balanced in the middle, like in that, because I know I want to live pure and true and kindness, but at the same point, I'm not going to take crap. I'm not going to be victimized. And that's the shadow because I'm going to stand in my power. And so there has to be that happy medium while acknowledging all that you are and capable of. But the free will of it is knowing I choose not to do those actions. I choose not to allow that darkness to manifest through me, but I can recognize this is an energy that's flowing. And I can be aware of that energy flowing, but it's not me, if that makes sense to you. I'm sure it does.
Yeah. Well, no, it's do no harm and take no shit. That's my motto.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not gonna do harm, but I'm not gonna take shit either. Like, that's the best saying, I love that saying, and it's so true. It's like, if I have to defend myself, I will. You know what I mean? That's that and that is part of the ego. Because 'cause I'm not just gonna sit there and say, "Okay, go ahead. Just do whatever." I'm gonna defend myself. If someone attacked me, I'm gonna defend myself.
Right.
I'm not just gonna let them come in and intrude on my space that I didn't give them permission to intrude
Mm,
on. So, I think there is, like you said, the both and
mm,
where, just being kind doesn't mean you're weak
right.
and yeah. So it is harmonizing the both.
And I
And
think that's the problem with some of the spiritual like communities. They don't want to look at the shadow. It's love and light, love and light. Everything's just peace because they you know what I mean? They know there's toxic and suffering, right? We know that. But you can't just be like, "Whoop, I'm going to look to the right my entire life and never turn my head to the left." And then some instincts. And on the other hand, there are people that are just completely in the darkness and then they're spewing that like everywhere because like you talked about that energy field, the auras, when you have gaps and tears and rips in that, when you're not anchoring the vessel of energy that you are just and everyone around you is then like, you know what I mean, taking that in. So even just owning and recognizing our own auras and how our energy, like what is the energy we're putting out, because when you're in a negative space, when things that have happened to you that are bad or depression or whatever, that fear and anxiety, when you go out into the collective, you're giving that energy to everybody else around you. And so, but when you're in the light, like the same thing. So it's like, what are you putting out for the collective to then absorb and transmute?
yep. I
Mm,
mean, there's a great video. There was a
yeah.
I don't know if it was a commercial or something like that, but it was like, and then there's also a comic about this, like a comic strip about it, kind of like the parents angry, so it screams at the kid, at the mom. The mom's angry, absorbs
Mm,
that energy, yells at the child. The child's angry, so yells at the younger brother. Then the younger brother kicks the dog or whatever it is, right? But then there's this other one where it's like, how do you shift that energy? So it has to stop somewhere because if you put it in the collective, like you're either absorbing it or you're transmuting it. But
mhm.
that's an individual job too, because we can't just stop people from spewing out their shit, right? That's part of it. Some people
Right.
will.
But I
Some
think it
people
comes
are
with a
never,
responsibility. We can be
some people,
responsible with our energy and our shit.
well, we could, but people don't.
No,
And
I
that's the
know, because there's no
reality.
awareness. They're not tapped into that level of consciousness. They're not even attuned to like what the energies are that are truly bringing in the emotions and the thoughts.
So yeah, so
Mm.
the job would be for us to so if somebody's spewing their stuff into the collective,
Yeah, it's
um,
you and I have to
then
transcend it.
Well, yeah, people that are aware, and it's so the commercial goes where, I think it was like a commercial, and it's like on they use like rubber balls to bounce it to the individual. So this person's angry and they use like a red ball that get bounced to that other person picks it up, and then they bounce it to the next person, and it shows how these energies get passed along throughout the
Mm,
day. But then
nice.
finally there's a person who catches the ball and puts it to the side and picks up happiness or whatever, and
Ah, I
it's
like
like
that.
it stops here.
Yeah.
There is that, but we can't, I mean, we want people to be responsible with what they put in the collective, but the reality is people aren't.
Yeah.
That's just that's the truth.
Right.
And so
Which is not
so
their fault either, because we, as a culture and a
oh,
world,
sure.
and where we are right now as a collective, we're just not educated. Like, we're
Yeah.
waking up to a lot of this ancient remembering, and we're finding our ways back to like the
Mhm.
resources and the texts and all of that that was, symbolically left for us to
Right.
find. But at the same point, all of that dark shadow is like and molded and crusted around. You got to scrape through to find that light, like you said. And it's funny because when I went to the very first time I did plant medicine for ayahuasca in South America, on my second night, it was healing through the heart chakra was kind of my journey. And that's exactly what I saw, was this ball that was just black, and it became like a little disco ball where little like chunks kind of was falling off, and light was penetrating it and penetrating it. And I had to purge like through the heart chakra, and by the end it was this fully, it was my beacon. And I was like, yes, I turn on my beacon of light. So I think in those stages, especially for the people who are awake and doing the work and understand, like, there's a bigger, structure that we're in tune with and playing out in our journey. Um, Accepting your mission and like with your free will and agreeing to do the work is always going to keep coming up at every, like, leg of the journey as it shifts. And for me that was really important, because it was like, here's your free will choice.
Mhm.
Do you want to turn on your heart? Do you want to make this be like the lighthouse and beacon that you are? And I was like, yes, I do. And so, okay, well, the next step, you're going to go to the top of Machu Picchu, and you're gonna ground, and you're gonna like send out that light, and you know what I mean. And here I was looking for my soul tribe and my soul team, like, where are you guys? We got work to do. And
Yep.
it's taken years, but everybody's aligning finally. And I think, like, we are this first step of the paradigm, of the new paradigm. We are like the foundational bridge, and we
Mhm.
can't go forward without acknowledging and cleaning up the shadows of our past.
Yeah, it's cleaning it up, but acknowledging it and giving it the respect that it deserves too.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's just we kick it to the side, and no wonder it's so wounded.
Yeah.
It's like we reject it over and over and over again. That's why it's like, if you think about like Zeus and Hades, that's why he's always like, "You kicked me to the underworld. What are you doing? Like, just forget about me. I'm just a nobody." It's kind of funny when you think about it, right? It's like, you know, acknowledge the shadow, that we glorify the light,
Mm.
and we just take the shadow and kick it to the curb. And you could think of it as a child. Like, if you did that to you had 2 children, and one was your golden child and the other one was just always kicked to the curb, what result are you gonna get? I mean,
Well,
it's the same thing, right? It's like, how, hug your shadow, embrace it, ask it to heal. There's also another, like, what is it? Not a meme. Yeah, it's a meme. And it shows the girl hugging her shadow. It's like this big monster. I don't know if you've
uh,
ever seen it,
no, I
but
haven't.
it was like, she's hugging her demon, and the demon is just like, oh, with his head down, just like, oh, like, finally someone notices me and gives me a hug, like, maybe I just
Right.
need a hug. Maybe I just needed
Exactly.
a hug all this time, and now I'm pissed because I never got it, so now I'm just being
Exactly. It's
a jackass.
rejected and denied and disowned because it's seen as bad. And you had said the golden child, but there's even like the golden shadow, which I think we've definitely have talked on briefly, but that's where, you get through all of the parts of you that you don't like in this shadow. And you go into the golden and you see all your potential that you're too afraid of embracing and exploring. So it's like
Mhm.
all of the best qualities of you are hidden away in your golden shadow.
Yeah.
But we have all the fear blocking us from diving in it to see our true potential.
Yeah. Yep. And then how do we get through that and stuff? But I think there's always some light, with the yin yang. I like that because there is light and darkness, and there's a little bit of darkness in the light. And so you can't have one. I think we've separated it for too long.
Yeah.
And that was our biggest mistake is trying to separate the two, and trying to deny one over the other, or trying to glorify one or the over the other, and separating it. Or you can't even separate it. There is no separation, but we
Right.
try to create language to separate it, symbols to separate it. We've created all these narratives to try to separate it. And because it can't be separated, um, we've just basically tipped the scales a little to one
Mm.
direction. And now we're freaking out that society's behaving the way it is. It's like that's the result when you just totally deny one part
Mm.
of the entire piece. You
Right.
can't just have one without the other. It's just not possible. They're both integrated into
Right.
one. So, and
That's part of the whole illusion that we're
yeah,
separate.
you can't separate it. And so
Yeah.
that I think that for me is like where it's at. So, I think people hugging their shadow, and just speaking it out loud and not holding it in can help,
Right.
I think, to heal or start
Absolutely.
to heal. And hopefully, make that crack so that the light can kind of start to shine through if you're
Mhm.
really that dense within it, right? And moving along is how I see it. So, but I think we can, as a society. I mean, it doesn't matter what we do, and we see all these crazy theatrics happening with the shadow right now because it's just wanting attention.
Right.
I
It's
mean,
like,
you could
yeah,
just see it as a
2-year-old.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah, having a temper tantrum, and it's like
Right.
they'll do the
Right.
most heinous things that you're like, "What?"
Right.
Like, but it's like that's the only way it knows how to get attention,
Mm.
because it's not getting the attention that it needs. And so we're starting to see a lot of this weird crap starting to surface all over the place from the shadow.
Yeah.
Um, and then what we keep doing is making it bad and trying to sever it. And it's just gonna get bigger and bigger if we keep trying to sever it. You can't sever it. It's just not possible.
Yes.
So
And I think the big thing is removing the label of good and bad. Like that is
Mhm.
the first thing. Like stop,
Yeah.
stop labeling it as good or bad and just
Yeah.
see it for what it is. It's an energy of the universe that, is just trying to teach you something, heal something, move along some way. It's not like bad, like bad people. I don't know. Like but I had a beautiful experience and it definitely got insight where the darkness, like the whole oneness, right? The twin flame, looking at the twin flame of the one and then breaking apart and then coming back, to oneness. And within that separation phase, I absolutely felt all of the dark energies of the like whole universe while being totally encompassed with the light. And it was very heavy for sure. To see like the way souls kind of just get bombarded and held down and hunkered down by that. So I think resiliency and strength is what people, you know what I mean? Like we got to find self-love, self-care, and just know like we have the resiliency and the strength and the courage within, and that's what needs to be tapped into to face anything, whether it's light or dark, because it's all unknown too. And the unknown in itself causes all kinds of chaos.
Yeah, there is a big unknown, I think. And I think, and that, that's kind of that fear sets in for people who don't know or
Yeah,
can't see or
yeah,
whatever, which could even be seen as shadow as
right.
well, because,
When
you're going into the darkness, not really understanding what
no,
is in
yeah,
there.
no.
But even our eyes adjust, right, in the darkness. So it's like there is the spark of light.
Mm,
Even in the darkest of places, there is that spark of light that's there for us, that's it's not completely one or the other, basically. And I think that's the whole structure of how the universe is designed in general. It's like we could never know if that's the full structure, but I think from what we can see, what we can understand is that there's this fine balance of this harmonious yin and yang, this
mhm,
harmonious ebb and flow between forces that seem like they're dual forces, but they're not. They
mhm,
are they're what's keeping everything in harmony.
right.
And you can't sever one because there without one there wouldn't be the other, and without the other there wouldn't be the one. And so it's like they have to they come together as a pair.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I think that we've learned, I think because of the human mind, we've tried to separate it.
Yeah. And
We've
that's
tried
why I like the
to
Hermetica and looking at like the laws of the
Mhm,
universe and looking at like gender. Everything has gender, masculine or feminine, polar
mhm,
opposites, looking at those basic laws, I think is a really
mhm.
good foundational understanding of how energy cause and effect, that ripple effect. These are basic things that we know, because the universe has its own laws and structure, and we are just a mirroring manifestation of that.
That's right, and so, again, yeah, it does have its and it's funny because it's like, well, people be like, "Well, God is a woman, God is a man." God is neither, God is both.
Right.
Right? God would be both, and
Exactly.
not either or, and I
Androgynous
think
of
that's
the feminine, masculine.
yeah, and I think that's the biggest
Right.
flaw that we face
Right.
as a human existence is that we've trapped God
Yeah.
into a gender, which is, like,
Mhm.
the weirdest thing to me, like, we're so too tiny to even understand the concept, but I think the best way to see it would be the both and, if that's the case, right? If God is all, then God is both and.
Yeah.
It's
Source
not
of
either or. Wouldn't
no.
even make sense to say it's either or, which doesn't make sense that there's heaven and hell because now you're saying that the one thing that created everything is not a part of the heart of hell. Then that doesn't even that logically doesn't even make sense, right? It doesn't even it's then you're saying that there's a separate God that created
Right.
hell, and then you're
Right. Well,
like,
I
"No,
mean, it's all meant for control and fear anyways, so they didn't want
sure,
people to really think too deeply into any of it.
right." But if
But,
I'm saying if
yeah.
you put the logic behind it, right,
Yeah.
for most people,
Yeah. Well, if
doesn't
you look at the
even
history of the devil,
it's
and how they even, took the god Pan and turned it into the devil imagery. So it was
mhm.
a nature god, you know what I mean? The masculine part of nature that was turned against us, just like the feminine part, was buried. And so it's all this ancient knowing of these energies and this universal duality that's just been completely like destroyed and buried from our awareness.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about it, it's like the idea or the concept that we can even understand can't be one or the other. It doesn't even make sense.
No.
Um, and but some people believe that through and through,
Right.
right?
We're
And
all
that's their
capable of
whole mess.
either. It's just what energy do we want to, when we feel that energy flowing through us, what choices do we choose,
Yeah.
make to to react? Are we triggered and react through the energies? Or can we sit with them and let them show us what, needs to be shown and healed? And we don't, we
Yeah.
react. We just react. We don't question anything. We're just like, oh, I feel this and I'm going to go and act on it. And that's where
Yeah.
like all the anger and frustration, because nobody's really sitting to get to the deeper root. That's just the stuff that's going to show up on the top surface level. You get, I think more through that. And that's where the light is at the root, at the core, like seed, that started the root.
Yeah. So I think, just looking at it and looking at the yin yang as a representative, which I think is such a great symbol,
Mm,
um,
I agree.
for the representation of what potentially could be how the universe functions in this like holistic, harmonious balance between
Mm,
this
yeah.
light, this shadow or light and dark, or however you want to see it, that
Right.
they are working together
Right. And that's why we're
under.
here. Like Earth is that school system so that we can learn that, so we can navigate that. So as our souls master it, we come out of that dark, low vibration of evolution consciousness and we rise and transcend into a higher back to unity consciousness.
Yeah. And so in the unity again is not one or the other. It's not an either or. It's a both and. And so the idea or the vision or the maybe the depiction of what we can comprehend of what God is not one or the other. Again, doesn't even logically make sense. And I think a lot of people are kind of maybe stuck in that narrative. At least I know, talking to individuals, right? Like we see it from a different perspective, but the majority, you got to understand, there's so many people that still believe in this heaven and hell stuff,
Mm.
and they believe it because, for me, it's like they want to believe it because they want to believe that people who are doing wrong should go burn in hell forever. Which to me, it's like, if you're all good, you would never want that for anybody, no matter who they were. No
Right.
matter how dark they were. So that doesn't even make sense either for me either, right, in the
Right.
narrative.
It's
So
darkness wanting punishment and vengeance.
correct, exactly,
So
and
that's
so
your
then you
shadow.
exactly, I know. And then but they can't see that, right? So they were like, "Well, we'd like to believe there's a heaven and hell because there are people who will." I'm like, "That's terrible to even um, think that because everybody has this opportunity to and has it within them. It doesn't even matter the heinous acts that they've done. Now, I do believe though that they will have to come back and repeat. Like that
Oh,
to
yeah.
me makes a lot more sense, right? You got
Oh,
to
yeah.
come back and you've got to repeat so that you can continue to learn until your
And the
soul is
karma.
actually into your soul's ready to evolve into this next phase of wherever we go, which fine if people want to think it's like a heaven. I don't even know. Like the reality is we don't know because we haven't died yet. Or maybe we have died and this is where we came and then we're going to do another death. Who knows? We don't know. You know what I mean? All we have are maybe some peer review articles of people who have had near death experiences that say they kind of see the same thing. But
Yeah.
I personally haven't gone through that. So how do I know? How do I know that's really what they went through? I don't know because
Right.
I haven't gone through it. So, we
I
don't
haven't seen things
fully
from
know.
near death, but I've plant medicine and my altered states have definitely helped me recognize my own personal like story and narrative and where my soul is doing its mission and where it's going. And I know this is definitely my last lifetime on earth. I don't have to reincarnate here again. So I'm happy for that. But
Yeah.
who knows
I mean,
exactly what's next? I just know I get to create some of it for sure. Like I am the creator of it.
yeah.
And taking like the mastery of the wisdom that I've gained for my soul through all these lifetimes on this planet. Like, you know what I mean? Ascending with that to create.
Yeah, and so you'll have people who are saying, they know that they've been here past lifetimes. I mean, there's several accounts of individuals, but I mean, in terms of like near death, like I have a friend who actually died
Mm.
and came back. There are those
Oh,
accounts of people who have died and come back, or and they say the same thing. I personally have not. I mean, I've never died and come back. So I don't know what that's like. Of course I've had my own altered states of consciousness and what's possible and stuff like that, but until we're final out of this state, right, of
yeah.
being in existence, we really don't know. Yeah, I
No,
mean, we
we're
really
not meant
can't
to
know.
know all of it.
It's this big mystery unknown, but I think
Yeah.
people use the idea of heaven and hell, um, as a way to feel like they're going somewhere that's either good or bad, right? And it is a control tactic, of course, too, to like, oh, you better do good here so you don't burn in hell forever.
Right.
Um, but for me, more than any, like I think that the whole reincarnation stuff, right, is the way that it happens. Um, so, what we do on life, and I know I wanted to talk about this a bit at the very end of it, had someone had asked, and I don't know that they'll ever get to hearing this, is that, we do have a choice here of how we want to show up. And there is a distinction. And I did talk to my friend about this the other day because he was looking for individuals to work with and constantly looking for gurus and all this, and saying, I go to these communities, and then how do you know if someone is truly telling the truth? How do you know if somebody is really spiritually wanting to guide you? And I have said this over and over on this podcast to my fellow listeners who used to get on here, that, and I would say it over and over again, is that there is this distinction between a magician and a sorcerer.
Hmm.
And the distinction being that a sorcerer is going to use spiritual practices, distinctions, concepts to manipulate others into their own personal agenda.
Yeah.
And manipulate and use it as a form of manipulation. So they're really good at using language to manipulate you, to get
Hmm.
you to do what they want. They're really good at saying that they're the only ones who have the answer for you.
Yeah.
Um, and you're just reliant on them to give you
Right.
what they need, what you need. So that is the distinction. And the distinction between a magician and a sorcerer is, a magician is really working to help you identify the power within yourself.
Yes.
So not saying I have the answers, but saying you have the answers in you, and
Yep.
that you can tap into that, and that you can find your true essence. And anytime, this is why I don't follow people, because my thing is I have my own alchemy that I get to bring to the world. My
Hmm.
partners have their own alchemy that they get to bring into the world. I am not trying to control what that is. I am trying to understand what gifts they want to bring and how do we partner and collaborate to magnify our gifts to the world. It's very different than me saying, hey, I have the answers. That's why I tell people on the podcast, don't take my word for it. Go research it yourself. Go, and I'm never, and another thing is with a magician is they're never closed off to hearing other points of view,
Right.
and really trying to hear and listen to other ways of seeing things and constantly learning. If they say they have the ultimate way, the only way, I would run the opposite direction
Yeah.
instantaneously, because we all have our own unique journey. So magician's gonna guide you towards your own unique journey, your own unique path. And as you take that path, you get to choose what you're gonna be. This is why they did not allow individuals to tap into the esoteric, sacred texts and stuff, because they were afraid it would end up in the wrong hands. Well, lo behold, their fear showed up because it's already in the wrong hands. They've already twisted the narrative ages ago. We were born into a twisted, manipulative alchemy. And so we have been run over by sorcerers at this point that are
Hmm.
constantly manipulating us into believing that we should follow them. And politics, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I
Oh.
just saw these people at the corner. Don't get me started. I'll just say this last thing because I saw these people at the corner, like, Trump for off, and I was like, do you guys realize that neither one of those effers give two shits about you? Neither one of them. They do not. Trump doesn't care about you, and neither does Biden, and nobody. They don't care. They don't give a shit about you. But here you are, their cheerleader, totally persuaded by them and manipulated by them, and not really knowing your own power because you want a God to save you. You want a human being to come save you. Neither one of them are going to save you. You got to save yourself, know your own internal power, because that's one thing they can't take away from you is who you are. They
Mhm.
cannot take that away from you. But I guarantee you, neither one of them care about you. And yet you're cheering them on like they're some god. That is the issue right now. And they've sold us all this manipulation, and people are so persuaded by politicians and I don't know, these freaking stars and sports, and it just trips me out. That's all manipulation, trying to get you to steer away from your own personal um purpose and life and soul. And it's a manipulation tool. And so that is the difference. That is the distinction. Any magician, I can tell you this right now, no sports person out there is really caring about the fact that you live your life purpose or not. They don't care. They're not trying to help you along your journey to find who you are internally. You know what I mean? They're just there to entertain you and keep you away from finding who you are. And so you're going to glorify them. That's manipulation. So it's really understanding the distinction between the two, understanding who you're working with, really working with individuals who are trying to ignite that light within you so that you can be the best version of yourself. And, I'm going to tell you right now, politicians, the whole system was designed on manipulation and sorcery. And so that's that's basically what's running the show. So for you and for me, like I always used to tell people when I was doing this a long time ago, even, um, you know, I'm here to support and guide, but go do your own research. Go figure it out on your own, because it's going to land better for you when you do it for yourself, you know? And then we can start working together in collaboration without having all this weird, I have to be the one who knows it all. Nobody
Mm.
knows it all. Nobody knows it all. We
We like
all
to
have a
think we
lot,
do, but
you
we
know what
don't.
I mean?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I just wanted to end with that because I know that was a question, and we can go in deeper on the sorcery magician stuff and how it's showing up in the world, and how people are so swayed by the manipulation and the narrative that has been handed to us, and why it's so sad that people have totally sold their soul, and they don't even realize it. They just, well, it's fun and they think it's okay. But the reality is you're wearing, I don't ever say anything. I have a lot of friends who feel that, follow teams and stuff like that and put on the jerseys, they do the things. And it's like they don't realize that they're being manipulated by sorcery, because a lot of that keeps them from truly tapping into their own personal potential,
Mm.
because they're so mesmerized by, I don't know, whatever players doing what, and I'm talking about sports in particular because I guess we just had the Super Bowl or whatever. Um, but even these stars, like I don't know, like I don't know what's going on with Taylor Swift. People seem to hate her. I don't even know what's going on. All I know is I see memes all over the place about her, and I'm like, why are people? I don't even care about her. Why do you guys care about her? Who cares? Like, who cares if she's evil, or I don't know. I was like, why are people so mad at her? You know what I mean? And I'm not going to do the research because I don't really give
Because
a shit.
she's the light, realistically. Right now, in a lot of ways, she's shining. And so the darkness is just kind of, you know,
I
again.
guess. I mean, I personally don't know. I really don't care, but I do, in the sense that I see that the masses are so focused on it that I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Mm. Yeah,
focus
no,
on your
it's so
own.
unavoidable in the past year. I agree. It's been chaos. But like you said, going back to the manipulation and stuff, though, I mean, the media, the capitalism, I mean, the whole system, the whole entire, like the banking, everything is just created in this mechanism to like keep us slaves to the structure.
And I'm like, who cares if she's dark or whatever? Like, worry about yourself. That's the point.
Well,
Stop
it's one of the
focusing
things when
on
you get too popular, people have to hate you. And so that's what's really like happening. Like just getting too popular that people are just hating her. So again, like
I
looking at
guess.
shadow and light, like why do we even care? Why do we have to? Why can't we just listen to music and entertainment and enjoy it without having to worry about their entire lifestyles? Um, but then again, it's avoidance, so we're not looking at our own crap and our own journey. So it's a deflection.
Yeah, if you don't like her, don't listen to her. Who cares? I don't like her. I don't listen to her music. I don't particularly care for her music. I don't think she's a great artist at all, personally, but that's me. But I don't care. I'm not going to sit there and pick on it and then I don't really give two shit. I'm serious. I don't. I have a life to live, and you have a life to live. So stop living in the shadow of other people too. Go live your life. Go
Yeah.
do what you need to do. Stop focusing on, even like conspiracy theorists. That's another thing that keeps us trapped. One conspiracy theorist after, who gives a shit? That's not going to help us create a new community.
Yeah.
That's not going to help us move forward as a system. That's just keeping you trapped in these narratives of looking at the issues. So what? We know they exist. They've existed for eons and eons and eons. And for me, so this is where I get very passionate. I'm like, well, who gives a shit? Yes, okay, maybe it was a conspiracy. Yes, maybe they are doing all this stuff, but what are you doing instead of focusing on them? What are you doing to help move the narrative in a different direction other than just giving it more power by talking about it? Who
Right.
cares? Like, it just, after a while, it just becomes this old narrative over and over. They're evil. They're doing ceremonies. Who gives a shit? Don't watch the ceremony then and go create your own shit and stop focusing on it. Like, you're not helping by just doing that. You know what I mean? It's like,
Hmm.
go out and start figuring out how you're gonna maybe add back to humanity in a positive way, you know?
Absolutely.
And so it's like, if you have kids that you don't want to watch it, educate them why, and then move on. But it's just, to me, it's just the society. They're just, I don't know how to. It's like, I think I get frustrated because I'm like, you guys have so much potential you're wasting on focusing on all of this shadow stuff. It's there, and it's always going to be there.
Hmm.
And until we start to move forward from that dialogue and start creating our own communities based on the way that we want to see things, the shit ain't going to change. And thinking that these damn politicians, either way, I don't care who they are not there for you. They do not care about you. I can guarantee you that if shit hit the fan, they are not bringing you along. None of them. Trump, Biden, whoever the hell else you want to talk about. You know what they're going to do? They're going to say starve, and they're going to go and they're going to make sure they're taken care of. And guess what? Biden and Trump will probably be together in the bunker. They're
Right.
gliding together. Well, and then laughing that, that we were dumb enough to just follow them. So it's like, it trips me out that people are still stuck in this crazy ass narrative and circulating it over and over and over again. And I'm like, wake the F up already. Like, just wake up. The
Yeah.
shadow's going to be there. They are doing heinous acts. They have been since the beginning. This entire America was built on manipulation. None of it was built with the transcendence of the soul.
No.
It wasn't for everybody. It wasn't created for everybody. From the start, from the get-go. So how, and then people want to circulate these ideas of, oh, well, we're going to just change this or we're going to change that. You're not changing shit. All you're doing is stirring the pot of the same stew. That's it. There's nothing changing. Oh, well, even the whole women's rights stuff.
Mm.
It's like, we work so hard. I'm like, what did you work hard for? The system wasn't designed for women. They didn't have women in mind when they designed America and the corporation. So how do they think we're going to win? You have to create new systems, and people can't even think outside of that. They're
Mhm.
so stuck in this system, they can't even create something new. They don't have imagination to even think of a new world or how things could operate. It's like we're just going to stay stuck here. Well, part of that is embracing the shadow, recognizing, yeah, the shadow does exist. When people tell you who they are, believe them. Period. End of story. These
Mm.
politicians have been manipulating us their whole life. That's who they are. So, will I say that they're right, wrong, good, bad? I'm like, well, hopefully I pray that they find the light within them and transcend, because I believe that for everybody on the planet. I believe everybody can, but I don't think this is going to be their lifetime. They're probably going to have to come back a few more lifetimes to figure that out,
Mhm.
because they've manipulated more and more people. You could see they don't even look healthy. None of them look healthy. They all look sick because they're holding on to all of this crap. So I just can't. I mean, I know I'm getting passionate at the end of this, but it's because I feel very frustrated by the masses at times, where I'm just like, you're standing on a corner cheerleading for Trump like a cheerleader on the sidelines, or Biden or whoever. I don't give a shit who it is, excuse my language. And the reality is they don't care about you. They
Mhm.
really don't.
Nope.
They're really out to get their own. Like, and that's the truth, both of
Power
them.
and money
Um,
for themselves.
yeah. So, and at the end of the
There's the
day, when shit
shadow.
hits the fan, they're not going to go scoop up all their people that were standing on the corner cheerleading for them. They're just not.
Mm.
Sorry. They've already got their plans about what happens if this shit show goes down. And guess what? It doesn't involve you. So, and that's just the reality. So face that and then move on. It's like, sorry, I just like totally went off, but I think it's just been triggered inside of me, because I'm like, I can't get people to understand that a new narrative needs to be created.
Right.
And you already know my take on it,
No, it
right?
is frustrating. I agree. I'm right with you. I see it. I'm there, and it's like, why don't, why? Where are the people that are supposed to be helping create the change? We're the ones that are supposed to actually like break the system from the inside, and so we can reassemble it. You don't even know like how badly I've wanted a it's gonna come to a revolution. It will have to like come to a civil war,
Hmm.
for sure.
Oh, it
And
is.
and
It'll
and that's
break
the thing,
out.
America itself. Oh, we are so brainwashed to just think we are the king of the world, always have been and always will be. And when people start waking up to the foundation being collapsed because that chair is falling apart under under you, and we are not, at the seat of the throne, it's going to be hard. People are going to have like the shadow, you know what I mean? Like the fear. We don't know. They have made it so we can't live sustainably. Like we don't know how for the majority of people to live off our own land. We can't. We're crunched into apartment buildings. We can't even grow our own food if we wanted to. So you know what I mean? So when it does start to fall apart, which is inevitable and will happen and is already happening with the age of Aquarius and Pluto and Capricorn Aquarius, yeah, we're on the verge, we're on the cusp. And it can't be the individual for themselves. It has to be community and collaboration. And we have to start thinking about healing the past to move forward. And to be on this hamster wheel inside this fishbowl is freaking ridiculous. And I feel your anger and frustration. I'm done with it. Like, I'm not a slave anymore to the system. My consciousness is too far expanded to allow
Mhm.
that to happen anymore on any type of level. And so
Yeah.
the only way to go now is to transcend and break it for everybody.
Yeah, and hopefully people can rise above those narratives, because I know that I've talked a lot about it on my podcast way before. Like, I just would continually just bring this up, because I'm like, people, wake up. Like, just you've got to wake up. You've got to, and I don't know that it's happening fast enough, but I know the ones that are supposed to, that are hearing the message and getting it,
Mhm.
will eventually, come together, like you said, collectively. I think it's happening,
Yeah.
at least for us. And I think there are other communities out there that are hearing it, and probably sprouting up and stuff. So it's just understanding that. And, I think a lot of people that I've been talking to about community are like, man, when you get this going, let me know. Like, I want to be a part of that. Like, people they
Yeah.
are craving it. They are overworked. They are done with this, slave, 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 slave.
Right.
Um,
We're out of
and I was
alignment
telling
with our bodies, with nature, with the seasons. We're completely out of alignment and we're robots. Yeah,
and
the
the
soul
thing
can't
too.
live like that.
Yeah, and I was telling them, like, the thing is that yes, we will have to work. That's not part of it. It's like we work. You have to work. There is no getting out of working. You have to, whether you're doing um out there tilling the land or what it is, but
Right.
what we've done is we've separated ourselves from touching the earth. Like we used to harvest, we used to grow our own fruits and vegetables.
Right.
And we don't do that. We don't touch the earth like you
Right.
said
Is
anymore.
meaningful work to survive or to
Exactly.
create things that were necessary and
And
out of
think about
passion or
this.
interest. Now it's like we so over mass produce crap. You know what I mean? Like the landfills can't even keep up. Like why do we need all this junk and all this crap? Like we
Which is
don't.
funny which is funny because I was even telling a friend, like, we're mad at this generation that is coming after us because they don't wanna work, but we're asking them to go work at Target.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, because we won't have a Target to go to,
Right.
or because we won't have a the," like, no, I'm sorry. That doesn't even why are we pissed at them? They don't wanna do that kind of work. Now, if we were out in the land. You know what I mean? And they didn't wanna work, that's a whole different story. That's
Right.
like survival stuff. But it's like, "Oh, who's gonna work at Target for us? Who's gonna," like, "Oh my god, really?
Yeah.
Like, that's why we're upset? Who's gonna run our computer systems? Who's gonna run," you know, what are you talking about? It's so superficial. You know what I mean? And we're mad because, we expect them to go work at Starbucks all day. Like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, who's gonna make our coffee for Starbucks? We need people to work. McDonald's, I mean, think about it. It's like, what the hell kind of world are we living in at this point? It's just it trips me out. I'm telling you, and it makes sense now completely that, these bigger corporations are afraid that the next generation isn't gonna work, and they can't find them to work. Well, first of all,
Right.
they're not paying them enough.
Right. And there's no
Secondly,
meaning. There's no meaning there.
there's no meaning.
If
Yeah,
you don't
and
feel
then
any type
secondly, they
of
can't even survive off
yeah.
of the pay that they're getting. They're like, "This is a shitty trade-off. How are you gonna give me less money to survive and want me to be there all day slaving for you, but I can't even survive. I can't even feed myself." Like, there is no trade-off there.
Yeah.
They don't wanna work. I don't blame them. I honestly don't blame this generation. I know people are getting pissed, but I'm like, "You are pissed because they don't wanna go slave at McDonald's all day? Because you can't get your Happy Meal or your Mc whatever it is, McChicken." I don't know, I haven't ate there in years, I don't know what they have. You know what I'm saying? It's
No,
like,
I do. I do. And I feel like with COVID that that
make
was
your own
meant to
burgers.
kind of shake up that system in place. Because look at how many people were forced to have to work
Mhm.
from home. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And that's the thing. It's not that people don't want to work, it's that people freaking got a glimpse into something else.
Oh, for
And
sure, for
that's
sure.
what they want.
Yep. Freedom.
Right. I can work from home. I can do my same job, but from home and be with my family and not have to spend all that time in rush hour traffic and be comfortable. Like I can do this. You know what I mean? So,
It opened the door, but then it also again, it's meaningless work. It's like we've overcomplicated the system with these jobs and stuff. Now, I'm not saying that capitalism hasn't done good for us. There's a lot of things that I like, but also it's time to let that paradigm go too. I think people are looking for a more simplistic way of living.
yes.
It's too over complex. The
Yeah, we
system
can't
is like
sustain.
overly it's like, let's get back to the basics, right? Like, that's
Right.
how I feel, and I can
Right.
tell you that a lot of people that I talk to are like, "Yeah, let's get back to the basics."
I mean,
Think
everything's
about all the shit that
chemicals and plastic.
this next generation's freaking holding on to all this stuff. Like, I feel bad for them, honestly. We've handed them a shit show, and
Yeah.
then we're mad at them because they don't wanna take it. They're like, I don't want it, not mine. What are you
Yeah,
doing? You're not me, not
right.
mine.
I'm just gonna
You're
live
it.
on my cell phone
Take your
because at
it.
least that's
Take
the
your
one good thing you
take
gave
your
me.
it. You can take the burden. Take your it.
Oh gosh.
I know it's just crazy, but I feel really
Yeah.
bad for the generation that's coming after us, and I think we need to do better at listening to them and being more compassionate towards understanding, because back in the day when we had middle class people rising, we don't have that anymore.
No, it's
It's
middle
very, very
classes.
it's we just there's no hope for these kids have no hope almost.
Mm,
It's like their hope does not lie in the system that was designed. And that's the problem with people is that they are afraid to let go of the system because why? Because they won't again, they won't have their Starbucks or they won't have
right.
their luxury items or whatever. It's like
Right.
get a horse and go ride a horse and buggy again or something. I don't know, Amish people. Let's just be Amish. But no, but I mean, for real, like, and then AI is coming in. And so
Oh yeah.
I was saying, like, with this paradigm shift, there's going to be, I think, a split in paradigms
Hmm.
where people
Yes.
are going to either go to this old way of living or
Yep.
they're going to want to be part of this new AI structure. And I think we're going to see that sort of happening within the masses where
Mhm.
people that are like, hey, I don't even want to be a part of this AI stuff. How do we go back to living off the land and cultivating the land,
Right.
on our own and living off the grid kind of. So, because the AI is going to be, I mean, who knows where that's going to go, right? It's like
Oh man.
it's taking
There's
over
gonna be
everything.
just yeah, no
It's taking over
privacy.
everything. It's
Yeah.
taking over everything, and then also it's they're like, "Well, the good thing is we can do what we want with our time and stuff like that," and I'm like, "Yeah, but is it really that?" We don't know. There's always the shadow side of that too, right? What's the shadow of that? And what's gonna happen? So we don't really know what's gonna happen. AI is getting more and more advanced. It's going to be taking over more jobs, as they start to figure out
Mhm.
how to automate a lot of these things. And then you're going to have individuals who are just like, I don't want the AI. You know what I
Right.
mean? And also
Not
basically
only that.
dumbing down humanity in a way too,
Right.
because it's like, oh, AI can take care of it for me, so I don't have to
Right.
think.
Or the
But I also,
microchips that they want to implant in people to make them more computer like.
oh yeah. I mean, it's just gonna go crazy, right? And for me, the AI piece is like reincarnation. That's how I
Yeah.
see it. I think we're at a time in history where people, if they want to reincarnate, can. And then, with those microchips of like, hey, I'm going to reincarnate my consciousness or whatever it is, and I think the people that
Mhm.
are like, yeah, I don't want to reincarnate, I'm good, are
Yeah,
going
there's
to,
a show on Amazon called Upload. And that's what
oh,
it yeah, they actually they do that. Like they are able to download your consciousness so that when you
huh,
actually
yep,
die, you're
yep,
put into like this whole like retirement mansion and it has levels. So like, the bottom one, you got like 1 gigabyte and you're like in black and white and you freeze up.
yep.
But like the rich, kind of like Koch brothers, like in like that they took from their representation or whatnot, and they made like,
Yeah,
obviously these rich kind of guys. And but it's funny like in that sense of just absolute like absurd craziness of
yeah.
like downloading your consciousness and like uploading it, after you die. And so yeah, the fact that we're already exploring with that through like media and shows.
Oh, it's happening already.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
it's so, and that's the crazy part. It's like, that's why for me, I just don't want, like, if there's going to be a version of me in this world, it's only going to be my voice, maybe some videos of me, but it's not going to be me, right? It'll
Mm,
be the residue of me, like pieces of me that I've left, like these audio things that are
yeah.
out there now and stuff like
Right.
that. But me, myself, my consciousness, my full consciousness and everything, I would not I do not
Mm.
wanna be a part of that. I'm good. I'm
I
like,
wonder if
"Thank
that
you."
traps it and leaves it from being able to evolve.
Yeah. Or it is a way to what I think, like, again, I
Mhm.
think it's just reincarnation, right? It's like the next level of reincarnation for individuals. That's how I see it,
Yeah.
right? But But I think there'll be a split of people who are like, "Yeah, I wanna do this." Not right, wrong, good, or bad, and then there'll be a split of people who say, "Yeah, I don't wanna do this shit." Like, I don't wanna be a part of that, I just don't. It's just gone too far. I don't feel like that's part of me. I'm ready to, I don't wanna live forever like that. You don't
Right.
even know what it's like, man. Could you imagine just being part of, uploaded into the system and, the chaos?
Yeah.
That's just weird. I just feel like I'd be out of control and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, my ego needs to control shit." So I'm like, the ego would be like, "Yeah, no."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not about to, like, freeze my body or deal with microplants or I'm all set, like
Or put yourself into a cyborg, not cyborg, like a actual robot.
Yeah,
They may be able to upload consciousness and then, we can live forever in these robotic bodies, but why? Why would you
it's
wanna
weird.
live here forever? I don't
Right.
know.
There's so much more to
Yeah,
explore. I'd rather stay
yeah.
curious to the universe.
It's like, whatever, I'm okay with, having a end date on this. Um, some people are not, and that's so I guess it's not a right, wrong, good, or bad, but I do foresee that the planet is eventually gonna get to that point,
Yeah, I agree.
and I think that there'll be people who are very interested in that and people who are not, and I don't know how they would try to force everybody into that either. Um but I think communities that are springing up that don't want to be a part of it, I think we'll see that more and more and more, and I'm pretty sure I know we're trying to build our community, right?
Right.
That it's gonna try to be outside that kinda system, which,
Mhm.
it's a both and. I don't think we can totally get rid of all of it. I guess you could, right, if you really knew how to live off the land and stuff like that, but again, I think capitalism provided us some really good stuff to use. It just got out of control. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Went way too
And now,
excessive.
yeah,
It
it's evolved
swang
into
one
this,
way.
but it's tapped into this whole other realm too. In some ways, a realm that we don't even really know. Like, do people really know what? So this because I see it as a realm. It's really weird. I see technology AI, right? Like right now, as we're speaking, we're tapping into this other realm by sending out these messages across the world, but who
Mhm.
else is hearing it, right? And then when you tap into AI, that's a whole other world. It's another realm. It's another way of existence. When our computers are off, there's still this world that's happening outside of us that we can't see. It's
Mhm.
still co-creating. People, "Well, you can just turn off the computer." I'm like, "Yeah, but it was always there."
Yeah.
I don't think that it wasn't ever there. I think it was always there. We found a way to tap into it. But do we really know what it is? No,
Right.
we don't know. You know what I mean? And it's like it's there.
And
And
that's
so
what I
some
think Tesla was exploring for
Mhm,
sure.
mhm, mhm,
And I mean, there's so much of his his stuff we'll never know.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
absolutely, there's I mean, between the wind and the sun and like the electromagnetic fields, I mean, yeah, there's so many ways to tap in.
Yeah, and I think somehow
Wow.
we've tapped into this alternate consciousness, that's like, yeah, we don't know. I don't know what I'm like. I'm okay with it, but I'm also like, yeah, I don't know. It's just there. It's happening, and then there it is, right? And so I'm like, well, I like this particular realm that I'm in, and I'm okay with it, and I'm okay with whatever's next. Just moving on to the whatever's next with it. So but yeah, I think, as we explore more, I think that's really what's important, right? And it's getting people to let go of these old narratives of, you know, the political systems that, it's just a manipulation show for people to stay stuck there, and then you have the legal stuff and you have all these other narratives that are circulating in this container, which for me is like a curse. It's almost like a program they have us, and you transcend that to tap into the creativity, right? To be able to find our own creativity. AI is taking creativity away from us. That's exactly what it's doing. It's
Yeah, with
it's
the
it's
writing and the
yeah,
art for sure, because now
it
it's so
is.
easy.
I know they're like, "Well, AI art," and I think that there are people who might get even more, but it's a bunch of buttons and stuff. What about real art? What about touching the
Right.
paint? What about,
Right.
physically touching the things that we're creating?
Mm. For
You know
me,
what I
it's the
mean?
writing part. As someone who loves to write and
Yeah.
has goals to, be published and stuff one day, I think it's the fact that, just taking these little blurbs and being able, and I think it's okay for some things. You know what I mean? Like there are some instances where it's really helpful. Like I've definitely used it on writing up like a biography paragraph on myself, just to get some better words and things like that or flow. But I mean, for writing stories or papers or, you know what I mean? Any type of like that, I think that's where we lose all creativity. If you're just going to key in some words and then have like this whole story come up, like, I don't know,
It's
like,
not
yeah,
your
there's
work.
no humanity behind that.
Well, yeah, it's not your work, number 1, and number 2, we're letting this other realm, I'm gonna call it a realm, we're letting
Mm,
this other realm dictate the narrative for us,
yeah. You're
which we
probably
don't even
right.
know what the agenda is, right? It's like, how do you know what their agenda is? We don't know. We don't even know. It's like their agenda could be something, who knows? I just don't know. We don't know. And so it's just having that agenda. It's like, why would I let something that I don't even know what it is narrate my life, narrate my story, narrate the stories? Imagine all of the people who are using AI to create stories and narratives. Now that story is coming from a whole other realm of existence that we don't know. What is its intention? What is it? You know what I mean? I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. And for me, it's kind of like, well, if I can't ask what its intention is and
Right.
truly know, I don't know if I want to even mess with it.
Right. I think it doesn't help that they have like, all the movies about computers being able to evolve and become right a mind of their own and then fight the system. What was it like iRobot with Will Smith and like a
Oh
bunch
yeah,
others in
yeah,
like the 90s and 2000s when we
yeah.
started getting fascinated with robots and technology. I think
Yep.
like maybe some people kind of had ideas then of like what could happen and maybe like trying to warn us.
I know, it's crazy, right? And so, at the end of the day, they're like, "Well, you guys are the problem," and then they try to eradicate all of us, right? They're like, "Get rid of humans." I don't know. I just don't know what the intention behind this realm is, and I believe it's a realm. I don't think that it's something we created. I think it's something we tapped
Absolutely.
into. We
Yeah,
tapped
because
into something.
yeah,
Yeah.
because frequency, radio waves, microwave
Yeah.
wave, you know what I mean? That's all we did was able to tap into some frequency wave that, like, connects us all globally. So
Huh.
absolutely.
But it's beyond even connecting us. It's creating.
Right.
It's creating now, you know what I mean? It's a realm of, like, who knows, you know what I mean? I don't know. So they'll just pull the plug, but I don't think you can. It's like it's something that exists, it always existed, and we
As
just were able
humans,
to.
I feel we created it, as a mirror
Yeah,
of the universe kinda creating us. So it's
it
like,
could
you know what I mean? It's part of that, again, that mirroring, like, set program algorithms,
kind it could be.
structures, like, it's
It could be, but I think it's just something that for me, well, me particularly, right? I believe that it was already there to begin with, and we're just tapping into it.
right.
I don't know that we created it.
Right. Well,
I
I'm
think
saying though, like like how we create books and movies, right? We create these things, but really, what are they? They're just reflections of the human narrative. They're reflections of the journeys that we go through. So I think with technology, we've created technology as a way to mirror what's happening within us. You know what I mean? The way that we're wired, the way that we're programmed, the brain, the nervous system. You know what I mean? All of that with consciousness. Like we are just taking all of like our human components and putting that into a computer as like a physical mirror of like what we are, which is mirroring back what the universe is. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I could see it as a mirror, but I still feel like it's something that was already there.
Yeah.
Like it already existed. It wasn't something that we created to mirror. Like I just think it's a realm we tapped into. But I mean, it might look like a mirror too, like you said,
Right.
because
Well,
we
that's what
are
I'm
a
saying.
mirror of
That's why we
other
tapped into it because it's already part of us. It's already within. We like saw parts of ourselves and then created it in the reflection of a computer.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, it could be. It could be through the looking glass. No, I'm just kidding. It's just tap into that realm.
yeah.
But regardless, it's there and it's floating and it exists and it's going to create um the shadow side too, that
Hmm.
how we use it
Oh,
and
well, the
how we
dark web. I mean, yeah.
yeah, the dark web, which
I
is
feel
wow.
like there's probably way more dark internet and technology and AI stuff than there's light, maybe at this point, but we're just
Well, and you know that
getting
that's
what
why I
we,
started Spirit and Coffee too. I
yeah.
said if people are putting dark web, then I'm gonna put light into it by
Yeah.
putting complete love into it, right? Like just pure love um into it. And that was like the whole concept of like I can insert love into,
Hmm.
a loving narrative anyway.
Right.
So if I was, let's say there was a piece of me in AI, like my voice, my ideas, all of the stuff that I've done, and that there was a robot out there, whatever, that would take on a consciousness that hopefully that piece would hit would actually be inserted into some of the computers or whatever, if they're robots or whatever consciousness, that love would be there and that love would be a part of it too.
Hmm.
And so that there would be this compassion component or something like that. That's the way I thought about it. And I was like, that's what I choose to do with it. Because some
Hmm.
people can choose to do the shadow part of it too, right? And where
Right.
I was like, how do I insert love into this web? How do
Yeah.
I insert love, pure love, and caring and kindness into it so that that's not taken out? So that's where the whole the shadow light stuff comes in too. That you like even in cyberspace or whatever, there still is this component of that dueling forces that are still part of the same whole, right? That
Right.
you still have the shadow, but you still have the love and the kindness and everything as well.
Right.
And so hopefully there will be some like compassion in there or something, So I just thought about it. I'm like, I'm not uploading my consciousness, but I can at least leave bits and parts of myself, that maybe will somehow, I don't know, hit an avatar that's in cyberspace some way, I don't know. Like, how do we know what they're doing? They could be living a whole life out there, right? Like, we don't
Right.
even know. Like, I don't know.
Right.
You don't know. It's like a realm that's like
Right.
growing and yeah, you know what I
Reminds me
mean?
of the kids movie Wreck-It Ralph with like or
Oh,
even
yeah.
Toy Story, right? Like
Yeah.
the video games get shut off and all the characters like go to like this hub of video games or like the toys when the kids leave the room, all
Yeah.
those kind of but I
But
mean
and I
in
see
quantum it's what if it's not being observed, it's not really there. Only when it's being observed does it actually physically exist.
yeah and no, because quantum physics says it exists as both until it's observed.
Right. So yeah, I couldn't remember how it went exactly. So, but
Yeah, quantum physics is that
yeah.
it before you observe it, it's a wave and a particle all at the
Okay.
same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And then when you observe it, it comes to a point.
Yeah.
And that in that observation, that's why I
Mhm.
said, "Well, what's observing us?" That always freaked
Right.
me out. That was the
Right.
question that freaked me out because 'cause I'm like, "Well, then something's observing us to bring us to a point,"
Right.
which kinda, like I said,
Consciousness of
creeps
the
me out.
universe.
Yeah, which is
Mhm.
creepy. Anyway, that just goes beyond, and this sometimes I just like it creeps me out a little bit. I'm like, "What's watching me?" Um, so you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's a big eyeball watching me, which it kind of creeps me out.
Right.
Um,
Well, it's
but
kind of
yeah,
true
in
though.
quantum physics, in quantum physics, it is that it exists as both until we
Right.
focus on one.
A
And I
wavicle.
think,
And I feel
because
like as
within,
twin flames in my own personal when we did that course, as a twin flame, I saw that. I saw myself as a wavicle and then me coming in as a wave, as a water
Mhm.
sign, and then like the air element being that the other particle aspect of it for sure, and then boom, coming back to center as one. So that symbolism played a good a good part in my journey of understanding like how conscious electrons and neurons and all these atoms come together and then manifest as physicalness. So that was actually really really important for me on my journey of discovery was the
Yeah.
quantum.
Oh, well, quantum physics is for me
Yeah.
a big I love, I looked into it before I even entered our program. I was reading a lot of it
Mm.
because, because it's basically blown open and shattered the paradigms that we live
Yes.
under. That's why.
Right.
And
We
that
can't
and
live in
that
the
is
old
the we can't, and that's
machine.
and but most
Everything's
people are
apart.
still and that's the problem is
Yeah.
people haven't caught up yet. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They're not caught up. They're just like still playing this game
Right.
that
Science
was
kind of screwed us.
created under this old paradigm and narrative, and now this new narrative, and it's really turning religion on its head. For one, it's turning science on its head. It's like, now what do we do? It's like
Right.
they've opened the can of worms, and now nobody knows what the hell to do, and a lot
Right.
of people haven't caught up to that narrative because they're just like, I believe this, and I'm like, yeah, but science says that it's not that. And then science is like, we believe this. And then religion's like, yeah, but it's not that. And then the two don't even know how to interconnect at this point. So there's this
Right.
it's a big goulash of nothing, and nobody knows what to do next. And so I always tell people, like, if someone says they know, run the opposite direction because they don't. They do
Yeah.
not. And that's what I love about quantum physics. It basically put everybody in their place to
Yeah.
say, we don't know. We can never know. We can never know it all.
Right.
Um, and we shouldn't. There should things that should be mystery or
Absolutely. It
whatever.
has to be.
Yeah, we would explode if we were able to hold on to all that. But or we would become one with it. Lucy, I don't know if you ever watched that movie, Lucy. That's kind of a good depiction of what I think would happen. Or I always talk about Indiana Jones. That's a good one too, where she's like, I just want to know all the secrets with the crystal skulls, and then she explodes, and it's like,
Uh,
yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen. You can't take on all that
yeah.
knowing, without like being dissolved into the everything. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So it's just crazy that way, but yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, it just spirals on and on and on, but I can tell you quantum physics is really been a blessing for people like you and I.
Yes. No doubt.
It's been the blessing for us in terms of, like, how do we, philosophize, and how do we bring into existence a new paradigm?
Yep.
Because it allowed it to happen.
Right.
It opened up the space for that, and it was probably the first part of breaking what I call this curse that we're under,
Hmm.
and opening our eyes, but most people haven't caught up to the narrative.
No,
As much
definitely.
as they wanna say they have, they don't really understand it. They don't really understand what quantum physics has done to the narrative in society. They
Right.
don't understand, they don't. They don't understand how it's impacted religion, and so those people who are not ready to face that, because they've been in maybe conditioned by these religious dogmas or whatever, are afraid to maybe even look at it from a
Hmm.
whole nother perspective, and so they don't even want to catch up. They just want the old to come back, and it's like, that we're not going that way. That's not the direct. We're not moving backward. We're moving forward.
Right.
So
Well, when you look at religion and stuff, I mean, it's all about hope and faith.
yeah.
And when everything's uncertain and there's so much darkness, that hope and that faith is what people are just trying to hold on to at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
without that, you're stuck in that dark, meaningless kind of void space, which is very painful and uncomfortable. And so, whatever can kind of bring in hope and faith is, what seems
Mhm.
to get us through. So I think again, it's switching the narrative. You can still have hope and faith for your soul and what comes next. It doesn't need to be painted on a heaven and hell concept or whatnot, but it's again, like you said, the answers, only you will have the answers within, nobody else.
Yeah. That's why we got to start searching within our own self and like stop listening to these crazy twisted narratives, man. They're just sucking the life force out of everybody.
Yeah.
And and then people do it, and I'm just like, all right, well, whatever. If you want to be cheering on the corner, I'm sorry, I just keep bringing that up because these people are just totally cheering, and I'm like, yeah, you're not. They're not getting it, and I'm like, that's okay. The masses aren't getting it. The next election that comes up, you're gonna see people, and then people fight over who's better, and I'm like, you guys don't even realize the game
Yeah,
you're
there'll
under.
be a lot of
They're just
shadows.
they're totally not getting it. They're not
No.
getting that this is a big game and show that it's like an arena, and it's
Yeah.
like, you guys are in the arena, you guys are the bait, and you guys don't
Mm.
even see it, and it's like, but they wanna keep playing the game, and they don't even realize it, and so I'm like, "Wow," like, there's so many people that haven't even transcended that. They keep thinking they're gonna change the structures internally. I'm like, "You're not gonna change it. It wasn't designed." These people who designed this current systems that we're under were super, super, super intentional about how they built it.
Oh, yeah.
They were not dumb. They were smart, smart individuals, and they used it, and the way they designed it was to keep certain things at the top, certain people,
Mhm.
certain families, whatever it is, but it was never for the intention of the masses to rise.
No.
Never.
No.
And then you look at it, and as you go along in history, you even see the federal government, the Federal Reserve, I mean, was not even supposed to be a part of it, and it played out that way. And now we're like attached to this, and we're a corporation. We're not even a country; we're a corporation. So then you had the transcendence of like capitalism that came in. So people don't even know this stuff. They're just like so oblivious to it. So they're
Right.
thinking, well, I'm going to change the systems inside. I'm like, no, you're not. And I had talked to a professor a long time ago, Dr. Martin. Really love that guy. He was so, I always tell him, you're the smartest guy I know. He's like, you don't know a lot of people then, do you? But anyway, that was his response all the time. But he would talk about, I told him, because I was so young, and I was like, I'm going to change the systems. I have a way to like restructure. And he's like, you can't fight a virus with the virus. He was an epidemiologist. And
Mm.
he just looked at me and he's like, you can't fight a virus with the virus. And I was like, oh shit. Like it just opened my eyes because I
Yeah.
had this like idea that I was gonna change systems, and that made me open my eyes to, like, I can't change this system. It wasn't designed to be changed, and it doesn't matter how much we try to morph it into something else, it's not going to.
Mhm.
Whole structures need to be recreated and designed, period, and people can't transcend that. They can't understand it. I think that going to some, political thing and changing a law is gonna change things, and it's not.
Right.
It's not. We saw this with women's rights. It went right back, and everybody's like, "Oh, we worked so hard." I'm like, "Why did you work so hard for a system that was never designed for you that way anyway?" Like,
Mhm.
why are you upset? I'm not upset. I know that they didn't design the system that way. Well, we thought we were changing something, and we're not. We're not changing anything until we create and recreate new systems
Right.
altogether.
I agree.
That's what needs to happen, and that's hard because that takes imagination and creativity and bravery and
Teamwork.
stepping outside, teamwork, yeah, and people who can see beyond that narrative, you know what I mean? Which
And
is
that's
not
the hard
easy.
part right now.
It
Is
is.
getting us all into alignment with the vision and the understanding of the current narratives.
I know. And people are stuck there. So
Yeah.
it's crazy. And
Yeah.
so every time people are like cheering on these political systems and all this and that, I'm like out there picketing and doing all, I'm like, you guys realize that that's not going to do anything. I'm sorry. I don't care how hard you work. You work years and years and years and years to get one law passed, and I guarantee you, in like 2 seconds, it can be reversed, and you've wasted all your time.
Mhm.
So it ain't gonna change. The systems were not designed to change. They weren't. They did it intentionally, and they were Masons for Pete's sake. They had esoteric stuff with them. They were conjuring up this stuff from ancient texts. They weren't stupid when they designed it.
Right.
They knew exactly what they were doing. They had an intention, and the intention wasn't you or I.
Right. That's why it's a secret society.
Exactly. It's like only these people can enter the chambers. Get out of here. I'm like, you can enter my Shaolin chamber. Let's see if you can get through that. Just kidding. They have the 8 chambers or the 12 chambers of the Shaolin for Kung Fu anyway. But anyway, so we've gone on quite a bit actually, just kind of
It's
went off
2
topic and
episodes in 1 today.
I know. So there you go. You get a lot of your
No.
full. So anyway, anything else you'd like to say before I just keep going on my
Oh
soapbox?
gosh. No, I think that was a great episode. I mean, well, we're talking about, consciousness and the spectrum of shadow and light. So there it's a beautiful discussion that can go on and should go on and on. And I hope if anything, just the audience that listens to this episode, looks at their shadow and, embraces
And
the
hugs it.
healing and the light.
Give your shadow a big hug. It's been calling for it.
Right.
All right. Well, you guys have a good day. We love you. Women of Consciousness, you can follow us on, we have our website is coming out. We're going to be launching that tomorrow, I believe. um or Thursday. So we have our website, Women of Consciousness. We're working specific with this specific target audience. You can check that out. We do coaching. Pam and I will do some oracle readings, tarot readings if you're interested in that ever. But we also have our Facebook and Instagram, Women of Consciousness. So at Women of Consciousness, and you can follow us on there. And we hope to see you, catch up with you. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can just go ahead and inbox us on one of those platforms and we can get back to you. All right. We love you. Have a fantastic day. Bye.
Bye.